God of the universe, maker of the stars, who am I that you would know my name?
In answer to Daniel's question, it is episode number 40. We have now been 40 episodes, kind of like, 40 days is the days of trial, 40 years in the wilderness, 40 days. So, guys, welcome to 40.
It doesn't feel like it's been 40. I can't
No,
believe we've
it
already
feels
done
like
40
38
episodes.
and a half.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, man. A little less. I still can't believe it's been over a year at least, I think, because it took about a month after Revive last year, and then we kind of got this thing kicked off and rolling.
Mm-hmm.
And life is, of course, as crazy as usual, and so every now and then a week has to go by. But we appreciate you guys still chiming in to want to listen to four guys yakking about something. So I wonder.
Four guys yakking.
Did he just put us into that we yak?
No, I love that. I think that should be our subtitle, like Life on Purpose, Four Guys Yakking.
It is four guys.
I guess it's better than this is better than the old guy and the three young guys. But hey, guys,
yeah.
I've got some great news for you. Is that I was in Durango, Colorado this past weekend and got to meet a lot of people. I was out there at a wedding. It was an incredible time, very difficult to even explain. But the bride and groom, I've known the bride for quite some time, and their story is just remarkable of how God literally brought them together. I mean, cool. Every time I listened to bits and pieces of it, it was something to the point they kept, they lived in two different places and they were flying out from a conference and ended up in the airport and they would say, okay, well, I got to go to my flight. And the flight would be delayed or something. So they'd meet somewhere else. And in the middle of that, they're sitting inside of a restaurant and a pastor is sitting in the restaurant that's from Pastor Greg from Los Angeles, looks over and sees them and comes over and kneels down and starts praying over them and prophesying over their marriage. And they haven't even proposed yet. It was just one thing after another. But they had made a decision, and I'm not telling everybody that, you got to do this or whatever. They had made a decision that they would not have any physical contact at all prior to the wedding ceremony. And I was able to stand there and watch them, their first hug ever, their first kiss. Talk about going against the grain of everything, but it was a remarkable weekend. Bride and groom were doing well. I just saw something on Facebook, but because of that, I was able to speak to a lot of youth there, some that have been listening to us for quite some time, and also a lot of new people. So for all of those that were around Durango and the wedding last weekend, welcome to Life on Purpose.
Awesome,
guys.
Awesome. Yeah.
That's good. New fresh meat. Fresh ears.
Fresh ears. Boy, what you're saying, Mike, it sounds like that's like a divine appointment story right there. That's pretty wild.
Oh,
God had it called out for him from the beginning. That's kind of wild.
Yeah. There's no way I can do justice to it. One of these days we're going to have James and Melanie on Life on Purpose to tell their story of all that went on. It was overwhelming, really, to just see two people that had committed their lives to the Father at such a level, and the extremes, so-called extremes he went to bring them together. If anyone's out there and you're like in that area of, marriage and where's the right person, I would just really counsel you. The Father knows, and the Father has somebody out there for you. And Melanie's testimony was this. She said, I waited and I started wondering if there was someone out there. And let me tell you, this James, there was if you know, if when you see this couple, it's like, yeah, God had some fun making the two of them for each other.
That's cool. I like the way you put that.
Yeah, it was good. So
How cool is that?
all right, so I'm
Cool.
back. So what are we
I'm
doing?
back. I mean,
I don't know. Like this is, I'm hesitant to like let go of what we're talking about right now.
Okay, go for it then, Daniel.
You know, well, here we are, four guys yakking. No, we just got out of Revive. Tons of youth there, tons of young adults there, most of them unmarried.
Yeah.
You just come back from this wedding feast, a story like this, and you know, we've talked about the concept of the forgotten generation, and one of the things that was spoken to that generation directly, these are exact quotes from people who said this to young people in that time, is you might as well not get married because the world's going to end and Yeshua is going to come back. So just don't even think about it.
Yeah.
My and this is not just our generation thing. This has been a thing from people focused on the wrong side of end times, quote unquote. Um, People in various denominations or belief systems that focus heavily on that. Like I know someone very closely who their father, so you know, this woman, their father told her every time she got pregnant, well, you know, essentially shaming her
Yeah.
because like, well, don't you know, Jesus is coming back, like in this crazy stuff. And so
Mhm.
I I don't know. I feel like that's a worthwhile thing to talk about because this is a subject that
Mhm.
it's not really talked about much as far as I'm aware, of how to approach it, of how to balance it with where we're going. It's the balance of, you know, we've talked about the balance of where we are now and keeping our eyes on what's coming, but this is a very specific aspect within that.
Ooh, I kind of want to jump off what you're saying there, Daniel, and like, because there's a good point there, because what the testimony you just told, Mike, about that idea of waiting, I think all of us can agree that might be one of the most painful things we do as of right now is one of the most painful, emotionally stressful things to do is waiting. It's not just waiting for a spouse back then. It's the waiting on opportunities. It's this, it's that, it's all this. Well, did God forget about me? Like those kind of things you're talking about, like that. Is there somebody out there? You kind of mentioned that, and then you're kind of bringing up that whole idea of it's kind of one and the same thing because you have a rising generation rising up to take on the world, right? And that's including relationships, getting married, jobs, all this stuff. And then another generation that's going, well, as far as I know, this is ending. So why are you even doing what you're doing? And you're getting this massive conflict happening because of maybe perception. That might be that's what I'm kind of wanting to take it from is that perception of, well, this is how I'm seeing it, this is what I believe, and it maybe the root of it is fear in a way. Maybe it is a fear thing. I know that I think a lot of people faith based. That was a conversation around a table, right? If you were Christian, I mean, that was something you talked about around the table. Especially as a young kid, that was something that was a little scary for me as a little kid. I thought it was cool and stuff too, but I remember those times, like you said, those times of, well, that's well, God's coming back. And as exciting as that is, that meant that I thought I was never going to be able to drive a car. Right? That's one of those things you just,
For sure.
but it's
Yeah.
like, but maybe I'll be floating on a cloud. Like to quote Ryan's from his testimony, I'll be baby angels playing a harp on a
Yeah.
cloud. Oh, that I guess. Oh, fun. That might be fun. So that's all I could think of in my mind, like what Ryan will say. So yeah, that's a interesting thing about that whole. I don't know. That's something that I think that we have some there. There's definitely a topic there for sure
Yeah.
on that.
Well, I guess we're into it. So since David, since
Let's
you
go.
mentioned Ryan, I guess we'll go to the fourth guy yakking.
All right. No, I don't know why when we brought this topic up, Daniel, I just had this flashback to this moment in it was a violin studio that my brother went to when he was learning violin. And he was learning scales, you know, just basic, run-of-the-mill scale. And he was moving along kind of quickly, and the teacher, she stopped him, and she goes, "That note that you just played was out of tune. So why would you proceed to the next note before first making sure that the note you just played was correct?" Proverbs says, I pull it up here, it's Proverbs 17:24. It says, "Wisdom is before him that has understanding, but the eyes of the fool are on the end of the earth."
Ooh, you want to read that one more time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Proverbs 17 what?
It's 17:24.
Okay.
Mhm.
It's wisdom is before him that has understanding, but the eyes of a fool are at the ends of the earth. Some say at the end of the earth. Some say that their eyes wander to the ends of the earth.
Okay.
There's a couple different ways that could be taken, but even taken it sort of in a different context of being like looking everywhere else but toward wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
Why is this fear being populated of something that it says no man knows the day or the hour of,
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
and yet it somehow seems correct that we would rob somebody of their hope and of their dream and of their vision because your eyes happen to be on the ends of the earth?
Yeah. Daniel was around with me in the middle of a time period in which I was teaching some basic survival, what do I call Torah's life. So preparedness, spiritual, emotional, physical, and preparedness. And it's interesting how many people didn't get it. And that I guess that's why I kind of walked away from it, because people were looking at the physical preparedness. However, they really didn't want to focus on the spiritual and the emotional preparedness of things. So I coined a phrase during those days of in storing food, don't forget to cook breakfast.
Mm-hmm.
Did that kind of go along with some of this?
Yep,
I
I
like
think
that.
so. No.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you see a lot of people. Well, this is interesting. I'm trying to think through this as I'm saying it. So we see a lot of people in various walks of life who are sacrificing their future for pleasure now.
Yeah.
And I mean specifically like the first example that comes to my mind is like the transgender movement that is, and I'm not going to go into that, but just where it's
Oh, wow.
it's making permanent decisions right now that are robbing your future literally because you now cannot procreate.
Yeah.
And so you see the same thing globally, where some of these really large, more communist style countries are putting limits on, childbirth now, and they are deleting their future. But here people who focus on the end times are doing the reverse, but the exact same thing. You're focusing on the future, but it's an unknown future, and therefore you are destroying your present. And I've always found it very interesting. I can't remember if it's Peter, Paul, or both that essentially say, like, the end times are now, the end of days is soon. And so if people 2,000 years ago were saying the end times are soon or
Yeah.
the end of days is soon, they've literally been saying that since Yeshua ascended.
Oh, yeah.
And so why would we think that just because we have more scripture to look at and more access to technology that it describes the words to us and that we can learn the language easier, why do we think that we all of a sudden have unlocked all of the mysteries? If you want to have a best-selling book, then just have something about unlocking mysteries and keys in the title, and you'll be an instant bestseller.
Right.
Oh,
So why would we
yeah.
think that we would have all of the knowledge that would tell us that when they've literally been saying this since Yeshua's time?
And anybody that didn't get what Daniel just said about, the books that sell the most, I could put together a conference on, dreams and being a part of the present and falling in love with Messiah and all those things. And then, next door would be end times, and that one would fill up. And I can prove this. I do a CD, a message every month, and I could go back and track it. The months that have something to do with end times, those are the ones that more people get. But if it's about today, why is that? Somebody give me, why is it that people, okay, let me throw it to you like this. And of course, you guys got me yakking. Thank you, David. I've got a reason. I've got jet lag. But so there's three places we can live: past, present, and future. The enemy would want us to live either in the past of, the cat scratched me and this happened to me and that happened to me. The future, Messiah's coming and why should I deal with anything? But he loses when we live in the present.
Yes. It's funny you bring that up. I was watching, of all people, it was a pistol instructor. And he said there's three things that rob progress. Number one is current judgment of your present performance. Number two is regrets of past performances. And number three is the image of what your future performance should be like. All three are progress robbing.
That'll work in golf too.
That works in just about everything, yeah.
Just about everything, yeah. That's true.
So I want to jump off what Ryan said, what y'all all have been talking about there. That's something I think we can tie that back in with what you brought up, Daniel, about how there was a lot of single young people there in that room. And I know for a fact, talking with them, and then the ones that I didn't get to talk to, the ones who were single, that was a massive, big topic on their brain. Is it too far of a stretch to think that the anticipation for having a spouse and all that stuff in the future could be almost the same thing? Because I brought up how that was something that was, like, you brought up the example about how, like, I'm gonna have another kid, and they're like, why would you want to bring him in this world when it's just gonna be all this stuff's about to happen? What if, in a way, I would like to correlate, maybe there's something similar there. So in a way of, so a young person being so excited, can't wait for eventual spouse, wedding, all this stuff. Then with another generation that being, well, the Messiah's coming, the same anticipations, hoping for that, but then how it's perceived, what their future looks like, is where it all gets all messed up. And I think that I want to then go after that. We've talked about staying in the past or future does not help us, our situation at all in our current present moment. And I think I would want to say that to then those, as the young people, because we've already talked about that with younger people looking for a spouse. Guess what? It's coming. Keep living in your present. Stop always focusing on what future's happening. Future's going to be there. You got a bright future. We keep quoting Jeremiah 29:11. He has plans in store for you. Be in the now and present, focusing on that is my future goal. I'm looking towards that. Do things now. And in the same way, we look at this other one of, well, the Messiah's coming. Well, guess what? It's not right now. So what can we do right now? That continues to further Tikkun Olam, repairing the world. It's a Jewish saying. And then it's also a saying of, what are you doing right now? Because if we're just so focused on future and in time teaching and all this stuff, we get so lost that, well, you know what? My neighbor actually lost their job and they don't even know if they can put food on the table today.
Yeah.
That's your current and present issue right there. Go ahead.
It is interesting that our podcast is so much we base it so much on Jeremiah 29:11. Another part of that verse of that chapter in Jeremiah 29 is essentially I'm gonna just paraphrase, to seek the welfare of the city which you have been exiled to.
Yeah.
And I think we've talked enough about how we are in exile from eternity. We are in exile from the physical kingdom on earth right now. And so that verse very well applies to us. I really believe that. I don't think it's taking it out of context to pluck that and apply it to us. And so we are to seek the good and the welfare of where we have been planted and to make a difference there, just as Daniel did in Babylon, just as Joseph did in Egypt. And so what I learned in retrospect is that I had a desire. I mean, Dad could tell you some embarrassing stories of me.
Oh, I can.
Just
Yeah.
how how deeply I desired from a very young age to be with someone. And it wasn't a
Oh, I thought you were going to tell another story, Daniel. I'm sorry.
no.
I thought you were going to tell
It
how you
wasn't
deeply
a
desired to have a monkey tail.
oh, that too. That's proof that evolution is not correct. The utility of it is just phenomenal.
Yes.
Anyway, no, but
Oh my goodness.
so
Sorry.
Love it.
it's okay. Okay, here we go. From a very young age, and this was not just a fleeting thing, I had a very deep desire,
Yeah.
in a very longing way to be with someone, to have someone to call my own and to live with. And even as a mid to late teenager, I would tell these adults how I wanted to get married and I wanted to have a family. And one of the questions I got a lot was, well, don't you want to stay single for a while and travel and this kind of stuff? And I was like, that's not for me. Like if I did that, I would rather do it with someone. And so what I learned in retrospect is that is a desire that God put in me, and desire is proof of attainability.
Yeah.
And that is true when you are united with him, that if he puts a desire in you, he doesn't do it out of cruelty or just to keep it just without of your reach. And so even if he comes tomorrow, he comes a year from now, 10 years from now, 100 years from now, it doesn't matter. It should not change how you live your day-to-day life. And that is based on your dreams, on what you're striving for, on what you're working toward, on what your desires are, all that stuff. Like everything should be based around your relationship with the Messiah, your deep, unfailing, unquenchable desire for him should base everything. And then your day-to-day life should just look like regular. Like you just live your life and then you build it and then you have dreams and you work toward things. And then guess what? Best case scenario or quote unquote worst case scenario, you're in the middle of building your business and he comes back and you drop it all with gladness and you go with him. That's the worst case scenario in what we're talking about right now.
I had something like smack me like a ton of bricks, and this may be reaching here, but a few podcasts ago, I don't know how many, we talked about the parable of the 10 virgins with the oil, right? Could it be that the 5 that were out of oil ran out because they were so busy using it to look for the groom's arrival instead of being assured in his certain arrival?
Oh, oh, that's so good.
Okay, sermon notes.
Oh man, that could preach on its own. Jeez, well, my Lord.
Man, like the 5 different lamps that went out, the various aspects. Oh my gosh, that's so good.
Boy, that's a new level of yak there.
Yeah.
No, that just hit me like out of total left field. I was like, well, they burn it up somehow. It was probably going, is he here yet?
Man.
Ooh, and we talked about this last week, that willingness to be still and wait.
So,
Is it possible that those, oh man.
So Ryan, what you're saying is that there was times and seasons that they would have, I guess this is what you're bringing out. I don't know. Let me run with it and then you tell me. So there were times and seasons that it appeared, okay, this might be a place that he is going to come. So let's go out and let's use our oil. But they were very fervent in their search, but they were also very wise in the use of the oil. So they didn't look for the bridegroom at times out of season. They just looked during the right seasons, and therefore they conserved their oil for the right season. Is that where you're going?
Yeah, you could say that. It's also bringing to mind in the Song of Solomon, and I don't exactly know where it is, and I'm probably taking out of context, but it talks about how she goes out into the streets and begins to look for her love, if you will. and she's accosted by, you know, different people, and she encounters all of these troubles along the way. When then we see in the picture of him arriving, he arrives to the place of her abode, if you will, to her house. He's not out wandering the streets in order for you to have to use your oil to go look for him in these dark places.
Okay, I got this thought that keeps coming to mind of the you know, one of the end time scenarios, and I used this past weekend. By the way, I was talking about you guys a lot, and not just about you guys, but about this generation. Okay, your generation, and how I see some wonderful things in this generation. But as I look, you guys, your first, some of your first memories were like Y2K.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the world's going to end, and it's like the disaster of the year program, or the, you know, people sign up for the disaster of the year
Very
club.
expensive membership, just
Yeah,
outrageous.
it really was, because it cost you your life. Okay.
Yes,
yeah,
it did. Thank
it
you for
cost your
picking that
life.
up.
Yeah.
And so as we walk through this thing, one of them was the Mayans. Okay.
Oh,
the
yeah.
Mayan calendar. I can't remember what year that was.
2012.
2012. Very good. Okay, thank you. The Mayan calendar. Is it possible that they got so wrapped up in end times they forgot to buy more paper for another page of the calendar?
Could be. Yeah. I remember that day coming, and Dad and I were sitting in the living room, and I just looked at my dad, and 12 o'clock hit, and I went, well, we're still here.
Yep. Yeah, it's, I don't know. And I think that sometimes some of these things that people start with are, you can't fault them for it.
No.
Because it's very, very easy to get caught up in despair. And when you're that deep in despair, but you still love God, what are you going to do? You're just going to desire with everything you have for him to come back and restore and wipe every tear. And that's a good desire. But to focus wholeheartedly on that is to forget and not. And there's a reason that Yeshua included our daily bread in the prayer that he taught to the disciples.
Yeah.
Because that is to be our lives, is the daily bread. And to focus too much, like you can't have too much of a good thing, and you can focus too much on his return if it is not properly balanced by your day-to-day living and the daily bread.
Yeah.
Daniel, what you bring up is something that okay, I embarrassed you. Now let me embarrass myself. You're talking about people that started out with something, and it didn't work out in the end. But you know, I've made it a point to never laugh at those who I saw do crazy things regarding the end times, if they did so out of a desire for his face. You know, it says, he who has this hope in him purifies himself even as he is pure. That's in one of the epistles of John. He who has this hope in him. And we talk a lot about hope and a future. Well, what is our hope and future? It's his kingdom. And so it was this is again before BD, before Daniel. And me and Kathy were in Tucson, or we were in Tucson, Arizona. We flew to Jacksonville, Florida to see my mom. And while we were there, I went to a Christian bookstore, and I saw this book that said 88 Reasons Why Jesus Will Come in 1988. And I didn't buy the book. It's like, or whatever. And I couldn't get the book out of my head, the title. And so we were heading to the airport, and I said, I got to go out to the Christian bookstore and buy that book. And I did. And on the way home, on the plane, I read that book, and I got so excited that me and Kathy read it. And I was like, wow, could this possibly be true? And people, it really was my first real brush with religion. Because I found out how many people sitting in a pew on Sunday were talking about his coming, but didn't want it. And so me and your mom, Daniel, you know us, okay? You know, when's the last time you saw us do anything halfway? They said, if you'd like to help distribute these books, call this number. So I called, They said, how, what would you like? How many would you like? I said, well, what is it? He says, well, I can give you, a pallet or two. I was like, okay, fine. Pallets, 2 pallets show up in our driveway with 5,000 books each. And me and your mom and a number of people, we would skip church on Sunday nights and we would go around Tucson, Arizona, and we would put them go to the churches and put them under people's windshield wipers. I can't tell you the number of churches, parking lots we were kicked out of. They were going to call the police on us. Pastors laughing at us. People laughing at us. Hey, it didn't happen. He wrote another book, 89 Reasons. It didn't happen. But I've never lost my faith, and it will. Mm-hmm. But it opened my eyes to how many people talk about it, but don't really want it. We need to be people that are not only talking about his return, but wanting his return, but we are doing while we're waiting.
I think that there's nothing lost in being excited. Like you're saying, you came from a place when that book came out, that was before me. And that book was there going, hey, there's so much evidence to prove that this is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Wonderful. I'm glad that it got quite a few people, including yourself, is super excited about the possibility of his coming and all this stuff and how great it is. I think, though, that you see how throughout history, I mean, just within these last few decades, how many people have theorized, well, the end. And, well, it's this year, it's this year, it's this date. At this point, for me, where I'm at, I just tone deaf. I'm just, okay. I hear date, blah, blah, and I'm like, whatever. And I would imagine a lot of younger people are in the same position.
Exactly.
They hear it, don't care.
Boy who cried wolf.
Yeah, and they just keep saying it over and over again. It's not just within our faith. It's like we were just talking about the Mayans. They predicted this and they said all this stuff, and who knows? That was what they decided to do. And I'm not going to hold a lot of credence because guess what? It didn't work. It wasn't accurate. It's not that you lose faith in, like you said, my faith wasn't destroyed from that. If your faith is hinging on his coming being within your lifetime, do you actually have faith? Because
that's a good statement.
How catastrophic will that be to your faith if nothing happens and you pass along like the rest of us, or like the rest of your family or generations before you did? That's a better way of saying it.
But David, what you just kind of went over real fast there, if you don't mind me interrupting you, is that
go for it.
You said, I kind of, just kind of put it off there. Is the other aspect is what has happened now to your generation. I've heard it before, so I'm not going to listen. And so that kind of takes out a level of right goals and right work and priority, proper priorities in life.
I think I see your point. Based that idea of hearing that for so long, then it's always associated with ideas of what that will look like. And that can, most of the time, it's doom and gloom. So you look at it from a perspective of, all right, well, those people are crazy. They think that they've got it all figured out. Guess what? Nothing's happened. Will things get tough? I mean, we're looking at the world right now currently. It's kind of crazy out there. It's kind of wild what's been happening over the last decade, over the last 2 years, right? How crazy it's gotten. Will there be tough times? Of course there will. But you have to always know that in your life, you will always have tough times. You will always have things that get a little rough. But knowing that in your current everyday situation, how many times have we talked about this on the rate? Every single time, having that personal relationship is what's going to get you through it no matter what. So when his coming comes, like we talked about, you'll know the seasons and times, or at least the appropriate time slot area where it should be happening. So we look with anticipation. Okay, we know the Bible says this. Has this happened yet? No. Okay, keep moving on. Keep doing good. Keep doing righteousness. With hope, I know my hope is found in this future thing that's going to happen. And guess what? Even if I die, I'm going to still see it. That's again, that might be a whole theological discussion. We'll just leave that there. But that whole idea of we're going to see it in the future, no matter what. I'm going to be resurrected. I believe in the one who is resurrected, so I will be resurrected as well. I can have my hope and know that I'm going to see that. But what I can do now is do everything I can within my power to do. And I think that that's where that some of that stuff gets lost, because it's fun to theorize what could possibly be. I
Mm-hmm.
I kind of felt like, Mike, you talked about how getting in trouble and stuff. I kind of felt like I was doing a little bit of that. There's some pet topics that are found within this walk, right? Certain topics that people get really, really bent out of shape about. And on one of those topics, I just said, it's like, that's cool if you think you got this figured out, but how are you representing that to people within this walk and then people outside,
Yeah.
everyone else? If it's not with what was the fruits of the spirit, if it's not meant with that, are you actually doing his work? Are you actually doing it?
Yeah.
And so I was like,
Yeah.
anyways, I will leave it. We'll leave what happened
And
later, but it doesn't matter. It just, we got to remember that. What kind of fruit are we bearing from these topics that we think are just it, whether it be
yeah.
end times or other? We got to, where's our fruit?
And I think it's really time for God to, or for us to allow God to redefine those things and restructure them and reframe them. Because yes, like our generation has now tuned it out for, as a whole, for the most part,
Yeah.
that's probably true. And we need to find that excitement for ourselves. And so, maybe part of that was a grace to get so disgusted with it, so then now we're ready for God to redefine it. But I've often thought how silly, how silly are people if the Bible literally says, which it does, that no man knows the day or the hour. Then what if some of those times that people said it was going to be that, what if God had to change it because now we knew the day or the hour? You know. But no, it's like, if he literally says nobody knows, why does any single person on the earth think that they're the exception that will know the day and the hour? It's absolutely ridiculous on its face, and I don't mind saying it out loud.
Hmm.
I want to tell a story of one of my first encounters. Actually, my first encounter in Israel, as an adult. I went when I was a really little kid, and then my first time back, we were sitting at the airport. We had to wait for more people of our group to get in, to go do the work with Hayuvel. And we're sitting there at the airport, and we got to be there for a few hours because we're waiting for a lot of people to come in so that we can, just logistics and stuff. And there was a group of Hasidic Jews, younger guys, late teens, early 20s, maybe, that kind of thing. Um, just school. They were there. What we determined later was they were there to welcome their rabbi back. Their rabbi was coming home, and so they were there to welcome him. And I don't know exactly when they started, but they started dancing and singing. And if you have never seen a group of Jews, specifically young ones,
Yeah.
but pretty much any like Orthodox Jews dancing and singing, I mean, it is electric. It is
It's like 100
absolutely
David
electrifying.
Coverts all in one place.
It really is. That's not an exaggeration. And so, I mean, their voices and their stomping and their clapping is filling the airport. And they would go for that first segment. They went for maybe 10 minutes, and then it died down a little bit, just for a little bit. It never stopped. And then someone else would bring it back up, and they'd go for another 10 minutes. And there would be this like ebb and flow, but it never stopped. It always was brought back up to temperature, to a really high volume and all that kind of stuff. And it continued for over an hour until their rabbi came through those doors. And that hit me so hard as like first experiences as an adult in Israel, to see that excitement that did not die down. They did not want to be caught unawares when their rabbi walked through that door, that they were not awaiting him with excitement and anticipation.
I forgot about that. Ryan, you've been kind of quiet. We haven't let you talk, so it's probably...
Oh, well, that's okay.
Yeah.
I love that picture, though. That's such a beautiful picture of really how it should be. One of joy and anticipation, one of uplifting those around us, instead of tearing them down, or, like I said earlier, of robbing their hope or their joy. Yeah. I'm drawing a blank as to where to go
That's
from
okay.
there, but
Oh,
So Daniel, on another note, you and I in that same tour were able to go to Itamar to the dedication of a new synagogue there, or Beit Knesset, or yeshiva, yeshiva there, and we were there when they were bringing in the bima, the pulpit kind of thing, when they were putting the mezuzah on, when they were bringing the Torah scroll in. I mean, what was that like?
If you've never truly felt like you stick out like a sore thumb, then go with a bunch of rednecks to a yeshiva dedication, and you'll know.
oh no.
Yeah, they said, y'all
I
stand in
mean,
the
here we
corner and
are.
look inconspicuous. Really?
Seriously, here we are, about a dozen guys, dirty rain gear, that we probably just drug out of the vineyards. I don't know, maybe someone had a clean garment on. And literally they just, like, we are there and just in the corner, like, what, I didn't even know what we were doing. I was literally like, what are we doing here? I have no idea what's going on. And then I hear singing and dancing and I'm like, oh, here we go. Um, and that's exactly what it was the whole time, just exactly what I just described, except there was no lull the entire time. Just if there's something to be learned from our Jewish brothers and sisters, it's that excitement over the things of God, because nobody standing in that room could have accused a single person of legalism, not in that moment.
Mm,
Oh wow.
Not at all.
yeah.
David, you probably experienced those times.
I have experienced those times. I think that that's something about, yeah, I'm usually like, oh man, I gotta get in that. I gotta join in with that. Um I have never seen yeshiva dedication, which would have been crazy. But yeah, after working out outside doing stuff, I would have probably felt like a sore thumb, like you said. Wow. I think that what we're talking about especially is that I think we got to relearn that there's definitely some aspects that we see in our present day that we need to apply for a future hope, and that balance that occurs with that, being excited for something coming, but then in presently we have joy moving forward towards that, right? We're joyful moving towards that. This whole idea of, oh, I can already see some people wanting to say some stuff, so I guess we'll just go ahead and try to hit it now. Well, we need to be aware, we need to know, and all this stuff. It's like, that's fine, but where's that balance? Everyone's different. Where's that point where we got to go, okay, that's enough of trying to figure out how the world's working, because guess what? There's some things that you're never going to know. You have to, once you dive down the rabbit hole, you realize there is no end. It continues to get deeper and deeper and deeper. And to realize that you to try to understand why the world is the way it is, like explicitly, is not going to help. You have to understand that the world is evil, full of evil, and realizing that us doing what we do presently is bringing good and bringing truth and bringing godliness back to the world. And if we're so focused on trying to figure out the dates, the times, the nations, who's who, and all this stuff, guess what? It's fun to get into that. I'll admit I've gone down that road before. I have not seen good fruit from it. So I'm anyone who's listening and is hearing us, and if this maybe is convicting you, we're not trying to tell you that you're wrong and that you're bad. We're just trying to tell you, hey, it's exciting. Just back off of it a little bit, relax a little bit, take a big deep breath, and actually look at who is around you and see what you can do about that. That's it. And God's got you. If there's someone said this to me, and I absolutely love when he said this to me. Um, if God can feed the sparrows in the air, how much more important are you?
Yeah.
How much more important are you to his plan and his purpose? Do you not think he's going to take care of you? Do you not think that he's going to figure that out? So who knew when the corona happened? Who knew what that was going to happen that year? Oh yeah, some people are going to chime in. I don't care. Most people didn't. But guess what? All the stories that happened, whether they they were fired or whether 19. I think that was a testing, or what was it? You said something on your program. I thought was amazing. Right when this whole thing started, and you were like, guys, there's something about this. It's testing. Just relax, chill out. We're gonna get through this. It's no big deal. And there's some people, oh, this is it. This is it. This is it. The Messiah's coming this year. It's over. It's on. Like, right. Everyone just chiming in. And it's like, relax. This is just the nations warring against each other.
Yeah.
Let it be. Relax.
And I want to say, I would encourage any young person to pursue marriage. Honestly, like, unless you really feel like he's leading you down a different path, because that does happen. Paul talks about, being single for a season, or, these kind of things, just so there's exceptions. But I would encourage any young person, I don't care what's going on outside. Like, I would encourage you to pursue marriage, because it's funny. I was sitting here on the Proverbs. I just glanced over from the page of what you referenced, and 18:22 says, the man who finds a wife finds a treasure, and he receives favor from the Lord. So, I mean, who doesn't want favor? These things are always worth pursuing because God put them in order. And one of the most freeing things that I realized, because you learn a lot, you guys know that getting married is one of the most selfless things you can do. It literally, if you're going to be a good spouse, you have to become less selfish. You have to step out of those things. And then, having children is another step, because you're literally now pouring yourself into these little humans and caring for them. And there's so much that you learn through this process. And there's something specific I was going to wait for it. Well, after that, I'll jump over to Psalm 127 says, children are a gift from the Lord. They are a reward from him. Children born to a young man are like arrows in a warrior's hands. How joyful is the man whose quiver is full of them. He will not be put to shame when he confronts his accusers at the city gates. And so these things, a family, a children, they're literally a gift from God. And one of the best things you can do to combat the darkness of the world, I believe, is to have children. Because as a person who believes in God and is going to raise their family in truth and spirit and in truth, you are literally bringing light into the world. You're not bringing neutral beings into darkness. Your intention is to bring beings and make them be light into darkness. And one of the most freeing things that I realized through being a father is it is not my children's responsibility to provide for themselves. It shouldn't be a thought on their mind. They shouldn't even know how to think about that. Like, that is my responsibility and my wife's responsibility to provide for them physically and emotionally in those ways. And in the same exact way, it is not my job to provide for me. It is my Father's job to provide for me. I just have to walk it out in faith and in love with to my Father, and my worship and obedience to him. And he carries all that stuff out. Like, all this stuff about the end times, like, it is not anybody's job who believes in God to provide for yourself or any of those things. You walk with him and he provides for you.
Well, to your point, like, you started this whole, encouraging the young people to pursue marriage. If we look back at Genesis, what was one of the probably the first thing he said was not good.
Yeah.
Because everything else was, and he saw it was good, and he saw it was good, and he says, and it was not good for man to be alone. It's as simple as that.
It is.
Well, you brought out that verse, Daniel, out of Psalm 127. Is it 127 or 128?
127.
Okay, 127. And I actually use that verse. I was asked to use that verse at the wedding this past weekend. And the first verse of that, it says, and unless Adonai, the Lord, builds the house, those that labor in vain. But it's an interesting thing I had not seen until this past week that I started studying this, that the word build there, unless Adonai builds the house. The word build is banah, which is the first use of that word is in the book of Genesis when it says, what you just quoted, Ryan, that God took the rib from Adam and made Eve. He built Eve.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. And it means, it doesn't just mean to build, it means to establish and continue. Just goes on and on and on.
Yeah.
Huh.
I want to chime in on what you were saying there, because I think we're definitely, if any of our friends from Revive listening, they're single, and those who maybe we have not seen and are single are just now they just can't wait. They're like, Daniel, I hear you. That's what I'm ready for, right? It's okay. I think the one thing you can take away from this, take a big deep breath. And everything you think of how this is going to happen, it isn't going to happen the way you think. And that's actually a good thing. Because I thought I was going to get married a certain way. Guess what? It did not go as I planned it. And I think that I know this, not think, I know this. Based on what I've seen in my life, the more that you are willing and open to say, God, wherever you take me, I will go. You just will end up finding yourself in that place, because we have so many verses to say, you should not be alone. You should not be alone. So guess what? Don't worry about it. It's going to come. But stop just being so fixated and focus on your future, focus on your present. Just keep doing just keep doing things. Allow yourself to say, hey, I need to not be so fixated on the everyday, my typical patterns of my life. If God brings up an opportunity that might challenge that, I would tell you to accept it as much as you can. Because some of those times, sometimes you just got to shift you around. Always ask him. Or if you're presently in a situation where you think that maybe there's something there, briefly, without making this a whole thing, just keep asking God. Ask him to remove that relationship if it's not of him. That's what I did. It did nothing but foster and grow, but even more so when I would ask God to end it every time. So, and then for those, we talked about one generation, then we talked about another one, talked about the end times. I get it. I love going in deep diving, trying to figure out stuff. Where's the fruit though? And what kind of message are you sending to those who are bright-eyed and just ready to take on the world? What kind of message are you sending? Because they're looking to you to figure out how to navigate this world. If you're just only focused on what's happening in the end, and it's that fixation that's happening, that needs a change. And be joyful, like the stories we talked about of Yeshiva being brought in, the joy of a future hope. Or really, that rabbi, that was to me is like one of the best ones. The rabbi's coming. They don't know exactly when, but they're just going to be singing and having so much joy, knowing that he is coming. Right? There was no question that, oh, I hope he makes it. It was, no, he's coming. Just can't wait till when he gets here. So we're just going to be here early, waiting and rejoicing and having a great time, not burn out our lamps. Really like that, Ryan. That was good. I like that a lot.
Yeah, as my closing thought, I'll say I totally agree with you, Dave. And so let me take that and make an amendment to what I said. Allow me to, for whoever's listening, I encourage you to have the freedom to desire marriage.
Right on. Right on.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it.
I like that.
Yeah.
Well, and in doing so, seeing all the examples through Scripture, and I was thinking about the parable of the seed being thrown along the way. Tony and I were talking about this the other night. And it talks about how there's the different types of soil. Well, was some of the soil that way because nobody had actually tended to it? We focus so much on the seed, and then, well, shame on that soil for not accepting it. But the soil had not been tended to. It was a rocky place, or, it had not been weeded, that kind of thing. And so then we see this example, too, of like Adam in the garden and even Messiah being sort of compared to a gardener. In the waiting of your spouse to come for your life partner or whatever, much like somebody who's planting a vineyard or a field, you're not looking at the clouds going, where's the rain? You're planting the seed and then waiting in faith for the rain to come. So in this time of waiting, instead of just looking at, well, when are they coming? When are they coming? Look at what is in front of you, what the Lord has put in front of you. Look at the ground that you're tending to, sow those seeds.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yeah.
So
Well,
Yep.
to not be too personal with the couple that I was with this past weekend, she prayed for 8 years,
hmm.
and she said, it was a long time. The wait was difficult, but there was
Mm-hmm.
things that were done in me during that 8 years. And Ryan, what you just said, and maybe we need to go to the parable of the soils,
Mm-hmm.
not the
Mm-hmm.
parable of seed, but this parable of the soil.
Hmm.
That the scripture talks about break up the fallowed ground. So when ground is there, especially in the desert climate, the ground actually produces a type of varnish on it when it's not worked,
Hmm.
and that varnish causes the water, when it rains, the water can't get into the soil. It just runs off. And so it
Mm-hmm.
needs to be broken up to allow the water to get in. And these are
Mm.
all the works that we can talk about, maybe another program, about allowing Messiah to do the work in us, so that, and maybe it's a process, maybe it's something that needs to be prayed over, because if you're really desiring a spouse, or whatever it is in life, do you want the Father to bring it to you at a time that you're not ready to receive it?
Mm. That's good.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, closing words. Daniel, you already said you had some, or you
Oh no,
already
that
said you
was my
did.
I
closing words a
Yeah.
minute ago. Yeah.
Ryan?
Well, in this, I was listening to a song recently, and it's actually speaks to this. So I pulled up the lyrics because it's like the last line. I'm going to change one word, but it goes, "Into a believer you have grown, from a seed somebody else has thrown. So go ahead and throw some seeds of your own. And somewhere between the time you arrive and the time you go, may lie a reason you are alive that you'll never know."
Mm.
I thought that was
Mm.
fitting.
Well, I guess I'll throw one in there and then go to David for his close here. I want to give a quote for him. I'm not even going to give the name of the quote, because it's a very secular person. Daniel's heard this from many years ago. In the best
Oh
of
yes.
times, our days are numbered anyway. So it would be a crime against nature for any generation to take the world crisis so solemnly that it put off enjoying those things for which we were designed for in the first place: the opportunity to do good work, to enjoy friends, to fall in love, to hit a ball, and to bounce a baby.
Mm.
David?
Guys, I think that we didn't expect the program to go this way. I think that it was fitting for someone to listen right now. And I want
Mm-hmm.
to tell each and every one of you, the biggest thing I can tell you is take a big, deep breath. Everything's, you are a child of God. You are part of your life has a amazing purpose. Take a big, deep breath. All this stuff that you're looking forward to in future and all this stuff, it comes in season. It's time. We've got to spend time with wherever we can. If there's any hard ground, like we just talked about briefly, got to tell it, got to get going. Sometimes that means we got to unearth some stuff. Sometimes we got to break down some stuff. It could be a little tough. It's okay. Deep breath. He's going to be with you the whole time. And really, in reality, sometimes this is almost said too much to be, maybe some people even want to just throw up when they hear it, but there's a truth to it, in that God has a love story with you. And a lot of times guys have a hard time understanding that. But guys, one of the most amazing love stories in your life is really going to be with God. Because every time you felt like it was all for nothing, he was there. Every time you think there's no point in moving forward, he was there to support you and bring you through. And a physical representation of us seeing that is what Daniel's talking about, that allowing yourself the freedom, saying, I want to be married to someone who is literally a part of my one, my echad, Hebrew for one. Part of that is part of me, that me and her are literally one. It's an indescribable feeling. I think that we would take too long to talk about it. Take a deep breath. Realize that you're got something amazing going on, and all this stuff will come upon you, and it could even overtake you, like the word even says. So I look forward to with joy knowing that you guys out there, that's coming for you.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've heard that he has plans for us, for good and not for evil, to give us a future and a hope. So with that, we should live our life on purpose. Great show, guys.
Yep.
Let's see where number 41 takes us.
Yeah.
There we
See y'all
go.
next week.
See you next
See you
time.
guys.